What if you woke up one morning, walked to the ATM, and your card got declined? You call your bank, and they tell you your account is frozen because, according to the United States government, you are dead. Your health insurance, gone. Your paycheck, blocked. Your ability to rent an apartment, apply for credit, or even prove who you are, wiped out. And you are sitting right there very much alive, wondering how this could possibly happen in the richest, most powerful democracy on Earth. This is not a horror movie. This is not a dystopian novel. This is the plan that the Trump administration, through Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, known as DOGE, was actively considering to apply to 2.7 million living, breathing people in the United States. And we only know about it because one man inside the system refused to go along with it, picked up a pen, and blew the whistle. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because we cover stories like this, the ones that shake the foundations of what we think we know about how this country is being run. And if you have been here before, you already know we do not pull punches. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone you know, because what you are about to hear deserves to be heard by everyone. Let's get into it. On June 5, 2026, the Washington Post published a bombshell report based on a 49-page whistleblower disclosure filed with two powerful Senate committees. The man at the center of it all is Jeremiah Schofield. He is not some political activist. He is not a partisan operative. He spent 25 years of his career at the Social Security Administration, helping to lead some of the agency's most important technology modernization efforts. He is a career civil servant who dedicated a quarter-century of his professional life to making sure the Social Security system worked properly for the tens of millions of Americans who depend on it. And what he says he witnessed from the inside is nothing short of jaw-dropping. Schofield says that back in early 2025, 3 members of DOGE showed up at the Social Security Administration's headquarters in Maryland. They introduced themselves as volunteers. Just 3 guys who wanted to help. Their names, Antonio Gracias, John Koval, and Peyton Relling. And what these so-called volunteers allegedly began pushing for, inside one of the most sensitive federal agencies in the country, was something that Schofield described as one of the most disappointing things he had witnessed in his entire 25-year career. Here is how it went down. Schofield says that on a conference call, a DOGE official, he identified him as John Koval, laid out the goal with blunt, unapologetic clarity. The idea was to take a list of 2.7 million people living in the United States and add all of them to the Social Security Administration's Death Master File. The Death Master File. That is the federal government's official database of deceased individuals. Banks use it. Employers use it. Credit bureaus use it. Government agencies across the country use it. If your name is in that file with a death date attached, the entire financial and governmental system of the United States treats you as if you no longer exist. Now think about what that actually means for a living person. If you are on the Death Master File, you cannot have a bank account. You cannot get credit. No apartment because no credit check will pass. No way to save money. No way to get paid by your employer. No health insurance. No access to government benefits. You essentially become a ghost, walking around in a world that has been officially told you are gone. That is the kind of devastation we are talking about. And there was a plan, an actual discussed, documented plan, to do that to 2.7 million people. Now let us be very clear about one crucial thing, because this is where the story gets even more alarming. The Department of Homeland Security handed this list of 2.7 million names to the Social Security Administration in late April of 2025. And Schofield, wanting to understand what he was being asked to do, pulled a random sample of 25 names from that list to check them. Every single one of them was alive. Among that small sample, he found United States citizens. Green card holders, people who are here completely legally. Teenagers, elderly men and women, and a widow who was receiving survivor benefits, the kind of benefits a spouse earns the right to collect after a lifetime of their partner paying into the system. Schofield said he cannot verify the claims DHS had made about these individuals, that they were criminals or suspected terrorists, the justification the administration had cited in its materials. He found no evidence to support that framing for the people in his sample. What he found were ordinary people whose government was about to declare them dead. Now here is the stated logic behind this scheme, as described by the whistleblower, and I want you to sit with this for a moment because it is extraordinary. According to Schofield, the DOGE official laid out two intended outcomes for this plan. First, the targets would become so financially desperate and socially paralyzed that they would choose to leave the country on their own. Self-deportation through manufactured financial death. Second, if they did not leave, they might come to a local Social Security office to try to fix the problem, to prove they were alive. And if they walked into that office, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents would be waiting to arrest them. It was a trap. A trap built out of fake death records, disguised as an administrative database update. Schofield described the call where this was laid out as one of the most disappointing calls in his 25-year career. He refused to implement the plan. The agency's own lawyers told him, and others, that falsely marking living people as dead would very likely violate federal law. And he has now documented everything, 49 pages of it, filed with the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. But here is the thing, and this is where the story gets bigger. The $2.7 million figure did not come out of nowhere. This was not DOGE's first rodeo on this front. By the time Schofield was filing his disclosure, the story already had a disturbing prologue that most Americans had never fully absorbed. Back in April of 2025, the Social Security Administration had already moved forward on a smaller version of this exact same tactic. Acting under directives traced to two memos written by then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to then-acting SSA Commissioner Leland Dudek, the agency marked over 6,000 immigrants as dead in its systems. 6,000 people had their financial lives effectively terminated by a batch update in a government database. And what happened? Field offices began receiving visits from people who had discovered, in some cases after losing access to their bank accounts, their paychecks, their insurance, that the government had declared them deceased. They showed up trying to prove they were alive. Staff had to use existing procedures to restore their records. This was not a theoretical catastrophe. It already happened on a smaller scale, a year before the $2.7 million plan came to light. Now, the acting commissioner at the time, Leland Dudek, told the Washington Post that he had heard the legal warnings. His response? He rebranded the category. Instead of labeling these people under the death file, he said they should be labeled ineligible instead. His reasoning, as reported, was this, quote, "Death is a state of ineligibility." Let that sink in. The pushback he had to the legal objections was not, "This is wrong, we will stop." It was, "Let us just use a different word." Since this story broke on June 5, 2026, the political reaction has been swift and sharp, at least from one side of the aisle. Senators Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut are leading the charge. Warren, who serves on the Senate Finance Committee and heads the Senate Democrats' Social Security War Room, did not mince words. She called this an illegal attempt by DOGE to weaponize Social Security to carry out Trump's cruel immigration agenda. Senator Blumenthal, ranking member of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, said the disclosure shows that the Trump administration used DOGE not just to recklessly slash government programs, but to purposefully hurt people. Both senators have sent letters demanding answers from SSA Commissioner Frank Bisignano and from the 3 DOGE members who were embedded at the agency. They are also demanding that all records related to these events be preserved. This is moving toward formal congressional investigation territory. On the other side, the Social Security Administration issued a statement saying that the agency did not add the list of 2.7 million names to the death master file, and that the agency maintains the highest level of internal controls. And here is something important. Schofield himself says he does not know whether the 2.7 million were ultimately added or not. He left the SSA in October of 2025. As of his departure, he said they had not been added. Whether that remained true after he was gone, that is still an open question. One lawyer who represented one of the 3 DOGE operatives named in the disclosure told the Post that his client, Antonio Gracias, knew nothing about the proposal to declare 2.7 million people deceased. The other 2, John Koval and Peyton Relling, did not respond to the Post's requests for comment. Now let us zoom out for a second because there is a bigger context here that matters enormously. Social Security is not just a benefit program. It is the foundational safety net for this country. Right now, 71 million Americans receive monthly benefits from Social Security: retirees, disabled workers, widows and widowers, children who lost a parent. And 185 million workers and their employers are actively paying into it right now, building up the benefits they expect to collect someday. This is not the government's money. This is the American people's money, paid in, paycheck by paycheck, decade after decade. Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security Works, one of the country's leading advocacy organizations for Social Security, put in terms that are hard to argue with. She said, and I am paraphrasing carefully here, Donald Trump ran on a promise to protect Social Security. But the whistleblower report is the latest evidence that he views it as a weapon, not an earned benefit, to be wielded against his enemies. She specifically pointed out that moving a living person into the death master file is, in her words, financial murder. Not a glitch, not an inconvenience. Financial murder. And Altman raised a point that I think deserves a lot more attention in this conversation. The people at DOGE who were embedded in the SSA got access to your most sensitive personal data, your Social Security number, your earnings history, your benefit information that you gave to the government for one reason and one reason only, so they could administer Social Security on your behalf. That data was not handed over for immigration enforcement. That data was not handed over to be weaponized against any class of people. Now here is the debate element that I want to bring into this, because fair coverage demands we hear all sides of the argument. The Trump administration's position, and it has been expressed by administration officials and DOGE supporters over and over, is that the immigration system is broken, that there are large numbers of people in this country who should not be here, and that aggressive measures are necessary to address what they describe as a crisis. They argue that benefit programs, including Social Security, have been exploited by people who are not entitled to them. From their perspective, cross-referencing immigration databases with Social Security data is a form of rigorous fraud prevention. Some conservatives will argue, if there are people receiving benefits or using financial systems in ways that are not authorized, the government has both the right and the obligation to act. And they would say that the fact that the 2.7 million plan was apparently never carried out proves that the system worked, that internal controls, legal counsel, and a whistleblower were all part of the process working as it should. Supporters of the administration's approach might also point out that immigration enforcement is a legitimate government function, and that preventing unauthorized access to federal benefit systems is not inherently wrong. From a certain policy standpoint, you can construct an argument around the idea that the federal government has an interest in ensuring that people in the death master file actually deserve to be there. But here is where that argument breaks down completely, and I mean completely, based on what the whistleblower actually found when he checked the list. He pulled 25 names at random. Every single one of them was alive. Citizens, legal permanent residents, teenagers, a widow collecting the benefits she earned through decades of her husband's contributions. The argument that this was targeted at bad actors, at people gaming the system, falls apart the moment you look at the actual data. The list did not distinguish between documented status, age, or any other factor. And the plan, as described, would have swept up every single person on it with no individual review, no due process, and no way for the living to prove they were alive without walking into a potential arrest. There is also a constitutional dimension here that legal scholars are raising. Due process under the Fifth Amendment requires that the government cannot deprive someone of life, liberty, or property without appropriate legal proceedings. What is being described here, mass, automated reclassification of living people as deceased, cutting them off from financial life, with a trap waiting if they try to fight back, is arguably one of the most profound violations of due process ever contemplated by a federal agency. Not against convicted criminals. Not after any court proceeding. Not after any hearing. Just a batch database update. And then there is the question of what whistleblower attorney Deborah Katz said publicly. This is not just an immigrant issue. No one is safe from this type of weaponization of Social Security data. If the administration is permitted to do this to immigrants, the same tactic could be used against anyone with a Social Security number. That means anyone watching this video, anyone paying into the system, anyone who depends on it. If the legal guardrails can be overridden once for this purpose, they can be overridden again. Schofield's disclosure also hints at something even broader than the death file manipulation. He says he came to understand that DOGE may have been involved in similar activities, using Social Security data to deny immigrants access to SNAP benefits and Medicare as well. We do not have the full picture on that yet, but it suggests that what we are seeing in this whistleblower report may be just a part of a larger pattern of data weaponization that is still coming into focus. What happened to Schofield himself is also worth noting. He left the SSA in October of 2025. His attorneys at Whistleblower Aid and Katz Banks Cumin say they filed the disclosure with Democratic senators rather than through normal channels, partly because of concerns about political interference with inspectors' general offices and fears of retaliation under the current administration. That tells you something about the environment inside the federal government right now, where career officials who raise legal objections feel they cannot trust internal accountability mechanisms to protect them. So where does all of this leave us? The Social Security Administration says the 2.7 million were never added to the death master file, at least not while Schofield was there. The plan was, by all official accounts, shelved. But 6,000 people were already marked as dead. Some of them showed up at field offices trying to fix it. The administration rebranded the category rather than abandoning the underlying concept. And we now have a 49-page sworn disclosure reviewed by the Washington Post and now in the hands of 2 Senate committees, describing a plan that was discussed openly in government meeting rooms by officials who apparently believed they had the authority to do it. And this is happening against the backdrop of Social Security being under pressure from multiple directions, staffing cuts at the agency, reduced access to field offices, longer wait times for people trying to get help with their benefits. The 71 million people who depend on this program right now are dealing with a system that is being stretched in ways that worry a lot of policy experts. The last thing the Death Master File needs is to be turned into a tool of political enforcement. Let me be direct with you, because that is what this channel is about. Whether you think immigration enforcement is necessary, whether you voted for Trump, whether you think DOGE has done some good things, none of that should change your reaction to the idea that a federal agency was seriously discussing declaring 2.7 million living people dead, without any individual review, without any court order, without any due process. That is not immigration policy. That is not government efficiency. That is the weaponization of the bureaucratic machinery that ordinary Americans depend on for their retirement security, their disability insurance, their survivor benefits. The people who stopped this, Jeremiah Schofield and the agency lawyers who warned it was illegal, did what they were supposed to do. They refused. They documented. They disclosed. Now it is Congress's turn to ask the hard questions. And honestly, it is our turn too, as citizens who pay into this system and expect it to work for us, not against us. There is going to be a lot more coming on this story. Senate committees are demanding answers. More documents may surface. And the larger questions about DOGE's access to federal data, not just at Social Security, but across multiple agencies, are not going away anytime soon. If this video gave you something to think about, please share it. A story this important deserves a wider audience. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the moment. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss a single update as this story develops. We will be right here watching, reporting, and digging into what it all means. Until next time, thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, the system works best when the people inside it are brave enough to say no, and the people outside it are paying close enough attention to care.